On January 23rd, 1959, a group of 10 hikers went on an expedition to the Ural Mountains, or simply the Urals. The Ural Mountains stretch north-south, mostly through Russia, from the coast of the Arctic Ocean to the river Ural and northwestern Kazakhstan. In the North Urals, there is a remote mountain, which was originally referred to as a Torten mountain. This translates as Mountain of the Dead from the local Mansi language. It is on this mountain that a strange event occurred, which would ultimately be recognized as one of Russia's greatest unsolved mysteries. This event has come to be known as the Dyatlov Pass Incident. Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old fifth-year radio engineering student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute in Soviet Russia, had planned a trip with 8 other students in order to receive their Grade 3 outdoorsman classifications. Dyatlov and all the other members were in their early 20s and were experienced hikers as well as respected members of the university's sports club. The trip was intended to be a challenge, covering 200 miles over the course of 16 days. The Thibeaux Committee of Physical Culture and Sport officials requested that the students add another group member on a last-minute notice, a 38-year-old sports instructor who fought in World War II, Semyon Zolotarov. On January 23rd, the same day the group received the route book, they set off from Ekaterinburg to Evedale, where they then took a truck to Vizhay, the last inhabited settlement to the north. On January 27th, they began their journey from Vizhay, with their destination being the Torten mountain. Just one day into their trip, group member Yuri Yudin, who suffered from multiple health ailments, decided to turn back due to joint pain he was experiencing, which made him unable to continue the hike. Little did Yudin know, his injury saved his life, as he would ultimately be the sole survivor of this expedition. The group was scheduled to send a telegram to their sports club upon completing their expedition. When the sports club did not hear from the group members, they contacted authorities, who sent out a search party. On February 20th, the search party departed. On February 26th, a tent was found at a mountain pass 300 meters from the top of the Kolatsiakal mountain. The tent was cut open from the inside, as if the group was trying to escape. As the investigation continued, the first 2 bodies were found several hundred yards away from the tent under a cedar tree. These were the bodies of Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonoshenko. They were found shoeless and in their underwear, next to the remains of a fire. Both bodies had dried blood, as well as strange cuts and bruises. Krivonoshenko, in particular, had burns on his body and a piece of flesh in his mouth. That was presumed to be his own flesh, bitten off his hand. Several yards away, the body of Igor Dyatlov was found. He was holding a branch had bruises on his knuckles and dried blood on his face. Based on the direction he was facing, it was suspected that he was trying to make his way back to the tent. A bit farther from Dyatlov was the body of Zinaida Kolmogorova, one of the 2 female students on the expedition. She had bruises on her face and body, including a long red bruise along her torso. Her hair was a mess, and her fists were clenched, suggesting that she may have been in some sort of physical struggle. About a week later, the search party discovered a 5th body, that of Rustem Slobodin, who had also been trying to make his way back to the tent. Unlike the other 4 bodies, Slobodin was found with a fractured skull. Investigators believe that this may be further evidence of some sort of physical altercation that may have taken place. Another strange detail is that Slobodin was found wearing only 1 boot and 1 sock, suggesting that he may have been caught off guard. Despite thoroughly combing the area, the search party was unable to locate the remaining 4 victims. It wasn't until around May of that year that the local indigenous people, the Mansi tribe, discovered the remains of a snow shelter about 80 yards away from the cedar tree where the first 2 bodies had been found. The Mansi tribe reported this snow shelter to authorities, who began to dig in that area. They found branches forming a makeshift floor, as well as some clothing that had been torn in strange ways, including sweatpants missing the left leg and a sweatshirt missing the right half. Further excavation in this area revealed the bodies of the last 4 members of the expedition. Interestingly, Dubinina was wearing Krivonoshenko's burned, torn trousers, and her left foot and shin were wrapped in a torn jacket, suggesting that they had taken clothing from members of the expedition who had died before them. Another odd detail was that the 4 bodies were stacked together in a ditch at the bottom of a ravine, which appeared as if they had been dumped there by someone or something. The bodies in the ditch had wounds that were inconsistent with the other members of the group. While all of the other group members outside of the snow den were suspected to have died of hypothermia, these 4 members seemed to have died from severe injuries. Zolotayev's chest had been crushed. Brignolles suffered a fatal skull injury. In fact, his skull was so fractured that pieces of bone had been embedded into his brain. Dubinina's chest was also crushed so severely that her ribs actually punctured her heart. On top of this, Zolotayev's and Dubinina's eyes were missing, and Dubinina's tongue had also been removed. Soon after the bodies were found, an official investigation began with a man named Lev Ivanov in charge of the case. Based on the conditions of the bodies, Ivanov's first suspicion was that the group members had been murdered. The investigation began in this direction, with a number of possible culprits, the first being the group member who left the expedition early, Yuri Yudin. While Yudin claimed to have been suffering from his health condition, Ivanov had no evidence of this. It was easy to presume that Yudin could have faked his departure and secretly returned to murder the group members out of anger or some other motive. Yudin was brought in for questioning, and during the interrogation, he displayed signs of nervousness. The result of the interrogation was inconclusive, so the investigators asked Yudin to help them analyze the scene of the crime to see if they could gather any additional information. Yudin pointed out to authorities that some of the group members were wearing clothes that belonged to other members. This important piece of information caused investigators to send the clothes to a lab for further analysis. What they would find would ultimately bring about many more questions regarding the events of that night. After Yuden's help, his alibi was confirmed. This led Ivanov to pursue other potential suspects. Ivanov knew that this mostly uninhabited area was home to a number of infamous gulags. Gulags were a system of Soviet forced labor camps that housed both ordinary and political prisoners. Due to the extreme nature of these camps, many of these criminals were hardened and considered extremely dangerous. Evedale, the town where the group took the truck to Vizhay, was home to the Evedale Gulag, which was close enough that if a prisoner happened to escape, they could encounter the group out in the wilderness. Had the group members experienced such a fate? Ivanov's investigation led to contacting the Evedale Gulag and other nearby gulags. However, no escaped prisoners had been reported. Once again, leading the investigation to a dead end. The next potential suspect would be the Mansi tribe. The Mansi are an indigenous people, known for being semi-nomadic hunters and fishermen. Some of them also raise reindeer, cattle, and horses, and engage in agriculture. The Mansi were occupying the Urals at the time, and although they were the ones that reported the last 4 bodies found under the snow den, Ivanov had no other leads to pursue. Ivanov also knew that the Mansi considered this mountain to be sacred land, and the expedition members could have been considered trespassers. This is especially true of the female group members, as it's considered sacrilege to the Mansi for a woman to step on sacred land. Could this account for the eyes and tongue removal that Dubinina had suffered? During questioning, the Mansi people denied involvement. However, they did report seeing something strange that night. They claimed to have seen strange lights, such as fireballs, light up the sky. Nobody knew what this meant, and possibly due to cultural differences, the investigators concluded that it was merely an illusion or hallucination they experienced, and discarded this information. Weeks later, the results were in. The analysis of the clothing that had been sent to the lab revealed that there were unusually high levels of radioactivity on some of the pieces. At this point, things took an unexpected twist. Instead of pursuing this new piece of information, on May 28, 1959, Lev Ivanov closed the case as unsolved. The Soviet government proceeded to close off the area, preventing anyone else from going there. In his official reports, Ivanov claimed that all the deaths were caused by an unknown elemental force, which the group members were unable to overcome. After the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, the records of the Dyatlov Pass incident were made public. This allowed a number of private detectives and amateur sleuths to analyze the information, leading to many new theories of what could have happened. One of the main theories that many people consider to be true is that this may have been a government cover-up. At the funeral, many witnesses reported that the bodies looked strange, having an orange ting to them, and many third-degree burns. Interestingly, third-degree burns are a sign of radiation poisoning. Since the case was promptly closed once the radiation had been discovered, many suspect that there may have been some sort of military involvement, such as secret experiments. Such experiments were popular at the time due to the Cold War between the US and the USSR. One important detail from the case files is that most of the group members had their own cameras, which was strange at the time. For an expedition in 1959 through such rough terrain, Why would so much equipment be carried for photography? Normally, one would limit their baggage to necessities in order to alleviate the burden of travel. Perhaps 1 or 2 cameras would be reasonable. However, reports indicate that there were at least 5 cameras. This takes us back to the glowing lights in the sky. One of the rolls of film captured the trace of what appears to be a glowing ball in the sky. Investigators suspect that this photo is related to the strange lights in the sky that the Monsi people had reported. And it just happens that this photo was the last photo on one of the cameras. Was this the last thing they saw before their untimely demise? Some believe that the lights could have been the result of a failed military experiment. For instance, a rocket may have been fired and crash-landed near the group, causing the spread of radiation and ultimately leading to a government cover-up of the events that followed. While it is interesting to consider this possibility, it does not explain many of the other clues found, such as the crushed bodies and removed body parts. Tied to the possibility of a failed military experiment, many have also considered the conspiracy that there may have been a KGB agent among the group members, specifically the last-minute addition to the group, 38-year-old Semyon Zolotarov. On July 21, 2016, head of the Dyatlov Group Memory Public Fund, Yuri Kontsevich, told TASS, a Russian news agency, that members of the Dyatlov group could have been on a KGB mission. Established in 1954, the KGB is a foreign intelligence and domestic security agency of the Soviet Union. It was the Soviet-era counterpart to America's CIA. The suspicion is that the KGB were using Zolotarov as a covert operative to spy on the Russian military, to see what they were doing on these mountains. Now, many people believe this theory to be true, including the university which sponsored the expedition. Around 1990, Lev Ivanov, the lead investigator in the initial case, published an article called The Mystery of the Fireballs, in which he hinted to have been under pressure to close the investigation following the discovery of the radiation, further supporting the government's cover-up theory. Yuri Yudin also believed in this theory. Before his death in 2013, he revealed that during his help with the investigation, he noticed items that did not belong to any of the hikers, such as a pair of glasses and an extra pair of skis. His gut feeling was that this was a staged murder. The strange thing is that, if Zolotarov was indeed a KGB spy, why would he also die with the group that he was secretly spying on? Wouldn't it make more sense if he tried to get away, rather than dying in a ditch with 3 other group members? There are more details, such as the bruises and cuts, that imply that members were in some sort of physical struggle. It's easy to imagine that 8 group members could overpower 1 spy, so it's unlikely that Zolotarov killed the other group members. Actually, there's another possibility altogether that many have considered to be a more likely scenario. Many people in Russia believe in the existence of a beast that you may have only heard of in myths: Yetis. Interestingly, the last photograph taken by group member Nikolai demonstrates such a beast. This photograph became so famous that a television show was made around the image called Russian Yeti: The Killer Lives. In fact, prior to leaving for the expedition, the group members had published a satirical propaganda leaflet that said the following: "In recent years, there has been a heated debate about the existence of the Yeti. Latest evidence indicates that the Yeti lives in the northern Urals, near Mount Otorten." Did the group members know something about these mountains? It's possible that they had discovered a lead, and this could even explain why they brought so much photographic equipment on this expedition. The Yeti theory seems plausible because of the bruises, scars, the crushed chests, fractured skulls, and the final 4 bodies, which seem to have been dumped in a ravine. Yetis are believed to be strong enough to crush a man's skull, and they could easily break bones. However, not everyone believes in Yetis. Even so, it still remains the possibility that the group members died due to an attack by some sort of beast, including beasts that we know exist, the most plausible being a brown bear. During the time the group members were on their expedition, brown bears would have been in hibernation. If a brown bear happened to wake up early, it would indeed be hungry enough to attack people. And a brown bear would also be capable of causing many of the injuries discovered during the autopsies. However, what makes this theory unlikely is that it would not make sense for a brown bear to kill all 9 members of the group. After attacking 1 or 2 members, the rest would likely flee. Wouldn't the bear proceed to eat its fill and simply leave the scene after that? On July 11th, 2020, after evaluating over 75 different theories regarding the Dyatlov Pass incident, Deputy Head of the Urals Federal District Directorate of the Prosecutor General's Office, Andrei Kiryakov, made an announcement stating that the official cause of death was an avalanche. It's known that the weather had been extreme on the dates during the expedition. However, back in the 1950s, the technology was not advanced enough to accurately measure the angle of the ground. Avalanches tend to occur on slopes that have angles over 30 degrees. During the initial 1959 investigation, the angle was estimated to be around 15 degrees. Therefore, the avalanche theory was discarded. However, using modern technology, the slope was calculated to be 28 degrees, which is very close to the threshold for avalanches. To make matters worse, there is a phenomenon in these lands called katabatic winds, which travel at very high speeds. These winds can move snow and trigger avalanches. Based on these conditions, investigators consider the mountain to be a sort of death trap, which resonates with the old Mansi name, Mountain of the Dead. Recreating the scenario based on new information, investigators believe that the tent had been constructed under the shoulder of a steeper slope to protect them from the wind. Based on how the snow was layered, the cuts in the snow made by the group to construct the tent, and the presence of katabatic winds, investigators believe the conditions were the perfect storm to trigger a slab avalanche that would have been enough to cover the tent and cause the hikers to panic. After the initial slab avalanche, it's believed that the group cut through the tent and departed from the scene to take cover from a potentially larger avalanche. This would have led them to the area roughly 50 meters away, where there was a stone ridge near a cedar tree, the area where the group had built the fire and where the first 2 bodies were found. Experiments were conducted to test visibility at night during similar conditions. It was determined that the group members would not have been able to locate the tent after making it this far. However, that did not stop them from trying. Dyatlov is believed to have left with Zaneta and Slobodin, crawling through the snow while following their old footsteps in search of the tent. A second group was believed to have attempted to carve out a snow den a short distance away in order to keep them warm. Unfortunately, this group seems to have triggered a movement of snow. Apparently, they excavated an area above a hollow tunnel that housed a frozen stream. While digging the snow den, they may have triggered a crack in the tunnel, causing everything to collapse. This would explain why the bodies were stacked together under 15 feet of snow. Yevgeny Chernyosov, a lawyer with the Public Fund in Memory of the Dyatlov Group, does not agree with this conclusion. Quote, "The relatives will not accept this conclusion. Only a technogenic theory is possible. Family members believe that the group members were too smart and too experienced to accidentally freeze to death in the outdoors. Chernyshov also claimed that the investigation was unlawful since the case had already been closed. Such investigations were usually reserved for open criminal cases. Chernyshev's point of view was echoed by Yuri Kintsevich, the head of the Dyatlov Group Memory Public Fund, who had spoken to TASS News just 4 years prior. In light of this latest official report, the public was outraged. Many disagreed with the conclusion reached by the Prosecutor General's office and believed this was simply a final effort to cover up the events that truly occurred on that fateful night. Since the Dyatlov Pass incident happened back in 1959, technology wasn't as advanced as it is now, which made it difficult to determine what truly happened at the time. As technology has improved, many new theories have emerged, but not a single theory covers all of the evidence that has been found. Due to the fact that 1959 was a time related to technological advances, covert wars, and a lot of military experimentation, it's difficult to discard theories related to possible experiments that may have happened in the Ural Mountains at the time. While the Russian government has already stated an official cause of death, it's clear that many people disagree. In fact, some investigators have formed an opinion that no single theory is enough to explain the events of that night. But what if it was actually more than just one single theory? Some believe that parts of all the theories may lead to the truth. For instance, what if there was actually some form of experiments that went wrong, leading to glowing lights in the sky that would have been seen by the Mansi tribe? This may have caused radiation to spread, and it may have also contributed to a small avalanche that could have covered the group's tent. This event, in turn, could have awakened hibernating bears and other animals in the area, causing them to panic just like the group members. After leaving the tent, it's possible that the group members encountered one of these animals, with some of the members fighting for their lives, while the remaining members may have tried to hide and escape. The latter group could have been the ones who attempted to dig out a snow den, inadvertently triggering a hollow tunnel to collapse, where they fell to their deaths. The eyes and tongue removal could have simply been the result of animals scavenging their bodies after their deaths, seeing as these bodies were discovered a few months after the others. Finally, noticing the chaos the initial experiment may have caused, the government could have reacted to this whole event by forcing the investigation to close and covering it all up. While there are many theories related to the Dyatlov Pass incident, it's possible that we may never truly know what happened. For those who don't believe the avalanche theory, which was presented as the official cause of death, this incident may just continue to be considered one of Russia's greatest unsolved mysteries. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.